Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for attending this second webinar on Hertfordshire's local nature recovery strategy, walkthrough of the detailed mapping and the priorities for the strategy. We're just going to maybe before we start the presentation, just give people a few more minutes to get in and get in all settled. Two bits of housekeeping before we start. The first thing is to say that the sort of running order of this will be an introduction of the team of the four people that you can see with cameras on. Then we'll go into a presentation, which will last probably roughly about 45 to 50 minutes, depending on how many questions we get during that. And then afterwards, we'll have Q&A session as well. So if you want to put any questions or comments you have, you will see there's a Q&A button and a chat function button at the top. So please do make use of those. The second thing to say is that we are recording this. This is because we are going to utilize it for the feedback process for this webinar session, which we will go into a bit more detail later in this webinar. So if you don't want to be recorded, although of course you won't be able to be seen because your cameras are off, your name will likely pop up. So if you can just leave the webinar if you don't wish for that to happen, and you can email us separately via the contact details that we have circulated previously. But just for a reminder, that would be localnaturerecovery@hertfordshire.gov.uk. So I think we should crack on. So without further ado, we'll just introduce ourselves very quickly and then we'll get into the presentation. So my name's Alex Cowley. I'm a account director for Meeting Place, who have been appointed by the Hertfordshire Nature Recovery Partnership to run the engagement and the feedback process for this for the local nature recovery strategy. So that includes the in-person events, which you may have gone to back in July last year, or the webinar series that we ran after that, and of course this webinar series as well. Maybe just hand over to Jake next.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alex. Jake Setterfield, Account Director at Meeting Place, Alex colleague. We've been supporting Mark, Izzy and the team on HNRP on the activity for engagement. So yeah, many thanks for spending the time to come and listen to us this evening. And I will hand over to Mark.
Thanks, Jake. Hi, everybody. I am Mark Wilcox. I am the Local Nature Recovery Strategy and Biodiversity Net Gain Project Manager for Hertfordshire County Council. It's a bit of a mouthful, that title, but effectively I work to deliver the local nature recovery strategy, which I'm sure you all know a little bit about. You're going to find out a lot about today, and support the new Hertfordshire Nature Recovery Partnership to create and then eventually deliver this strategy. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague Izzy lastly.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, I'm Izzy. I'm also working at the County Council on a student placement as Nature Recovery Officer, helping out with the project management side of the NRS.
Amazing, thanks everyone. So yeah, so let's crack on with the presentation part of this webinar. So I'm just going to share my screen, and then Mark's going to hand over to Mark, who's going to take us through it. So hopefully everyone should be able to see the presentation.
Yeah, looks good. Thanks, Alex. Just to say before we do jump in, Alex mentioned at the start of the session, there is a Q&A function. So if you look at the top, if you're on desktop, if you look at the top of your screen under that kind of banner next to the chat box, there's a Q&A section there. So yeah, throughout, if you've got any questions, do put them in there. There is a Q&A section at the end, but where relevant, I'll be reviewing the questions and yeah, posing those questions to Mark and Izzy throughout. Yeah.
Thanks very much, guys. So thank you all for coming. First of all, I can see there's some familiar names in the audience, and I know most of you, I expect, will have come to previous events. I can see there are some people that have done. If you haven't, and this is your first time hearing about the local nature recovery strategy in any detail, don't worry. I will go over some of the broader points, and there'll be plenty of opportunity to ask questions about anything that's unclear to you. But today will be the first opportunity really that we're giving to get into the detail of the local nature recovery strategy. So I'll explain a little bit more about that as we go. Next slide, please, Alex. Okay, so the plan for this evening is to give you an update on the progress. So what we've been doing since we last did some engagement events. So we had some in-person events in the summer, and then we had a brief update in the autumn. I'll be covering most of what we've done since that time. Then I'm going to introduce you to some of the priorities and measures. I'll also explain what priorities and measures are on the way. And then there'll be an opportunity to see some of the mapping that's been completed as well, which will form a key part of the LNRS. So previously, as I said, we've been doing more introductory stuff. We've been talking about the LNRS in quite broad terms, but today we will be able to show you some of the detail. So we are really keen to get some of your feedback on it. We can't show you all of it, partly because it's still very much in progress, and we don't have it in a state where we can share all of it with you, partly because it's quite a detailed document, and it just wouldn't be possible to go through all of it in a session like this. So we're going to focus on a bit of it and look at that bit in detail. Specifically, we'll be interested in your thoughts on the priorities and measures. So have we got them right? Do they make sense? Do you at least get an idea of where we're heading with them? Anything we can do to improve them? We'll have a look at the mapping tool. So I'll show you the draft interface for this as well as the actual data that we have in the LRS. And again, keen to hear whether you think that looks easy to use, whether it is the kind of tool that you could see yourself using, and whether the actual data we've got in there looks accurate to you, or if there's anything we're missing or we've included that we shouldn't have. And lastly is how you use the LNRS. So this is really important. I'll talk more about this in a bit, but we are reaching out to lots of different groups of individuals about how they will use the LRS, whether it's got the functionality that they expect, because the LRS needs to work for a lot of different user groups. So it's not just something that will be used by ecologists within councils and planners. It's something that's got to work for public sector, for private sector, for the third sector. It's got to work for large organizations, and it's got to work for individual residents as well. That's a big ask. And the only way we'll get anywhere near to achieving that is by running sessions like this with lots of different individuals and saying, tell us what you want to do. So we will really value the feedback you can give us on that, and we'll tell you more about how you can provide us with that feedback a bit later on. But it is predominantly through a web-based feedback form. We're going to give you a bit of time to provide that feedback to us. So we'll provide you with the recording of today's session, as well as the slideshow, so that you can go back over anything you missed and rewatch anything and read some stuff. There's quite a lot of content later on in the presentation, which I won't go through, but because you'll be provided with the presentation, you can go back and read through it. And I thoroughly advise you to do that before you submit a feedback form, so that you can really have a quite discerning view of what we've shown you. So we are keeping the feedback forms open until the 9th of March, as I said, to give you some time to do that. And this isn't your only opportunity to input into this. So as I said, the LRS is still in progress. We can't show you all of it now. There will be a point very soon when you will be able to see all of it, and that will be the public consultation that will take place in the summer. So that will be your formal opportunity to have a deep dive of the LRS, view basically everything that's been done today, and view it as a draft strategy. What we're giving you the opportunity to do today is comment on the structure, the focus of it, the purpose of it, how it looks, and some of the detail of it as well. So effectively, we are still in the production process, and we're giving you sort of an early taster to provide some comments into it while there's still time to make fairly substantial tweaks. Okay, Alex, next slide, please. So, in order to cover everything I've just mentioned, we are going to run the session like this. I'll give a brief progress update to begin with, then a bit of a refresher on the LRS, what the function of it is, what's gone into it, what it needs to do, what it can't do. And then we'll go into some of the content of the in progress LRS. So we're going to look at the habitat classifications, the priorities and measures, so what priorities and measures are specifically, and then some sample priorities and measures. We're going to look at some of the species and how we've classified species within this. I'm then going to show you some of the mapping actually through the live mapping tool. And we've got a Q&A at the end and next steps, talking about what you can do following this session and the milestones in the LRS process beyond this webinar. We've got Q&A at the end, but if you drop questions in the Q&A throughout, Jake will stop me at certain points and ask where they're most relevant. And then we'll have some more general questions at the end. Okay, next slide, please. So what is the local nature recovery strategy? You might think we have something like this already, or you might be surprised to learn that we don't. You might have heard of similar strategies that the County Council either has created or been a part of creating. We have a green infrastructure strategy in Hertfordshire. We've had a biodiversity action plan for at least 25 years. There are biodiversity targets that the County Council and District Councils hold. So there's been plenty of work in this area. It's not something brand new that we are just starting to get involved in. But what we don't have is a comprehensive nature strategy. And that's what really marks us out as different from what we've had before. So a strategy that focuses on biodiversity as its core. Sorry, a strategy that focuses on biodiversity is the core of this. Improving the biodiversity of Hertfordshire is really, really important, but it has a wider purview than that. So we're also looking at how we can deliver broader environmental benefits. So how can we improve water quality and improve air quality within the county? How can we sequester carbon? How can we deliver flood mitigation through habitat creation as well? And how can we improve access to green space as well? So how can we directly benefit residents through bringing nature into urban areas and making it more accessible? It's good to have more nature around generally, but it's great if we can do that, create more nature, and also put it in a place where people can really enjoy it, make the most out of it, where currently there's a deficit of nature. Also, this is a truly collaborative strategy that's being created for Hertfordshire and by Hertfordshire. This isn't a county council project, so I am employed by the county council, but I'm employed to work as the project manager for the newly set up Hertfordshire Nature Recovery Partnership, of which the county council is one of about 15 different organisations. So already there's a lot of different organisations directly involved in the creation of this strategy. The district and borough councils are also key partners in this, and we have been running events like this throughout the production stage of the LRS to ensure that we not just use effectively all the data that we have access to through central government and through the local record centre, but also we have sort of grassroots contributions, so community submissions of sites, species suggestions, and other information that we could miss if we take an approach that's too sort of top-down heavy. But the idea is that we have top-down lots of data, bottom-up contributions from individuals, community groups, everybody who wants to be involved, and we'll mesh them together to provide a very collaborative and hopefully more accurate and inclusive strategy.
Just thinking laterally on that, Mark, we had a few questions yesterday, didn't we, surrounding how that links up to neighbouring counties and how Hertfordshire's local nature recovery strategy will kind of support with. Essex, for example, obviously rivers, for example, cut across various different counties. They don't adhere to those county borders. Could you touch upon that a little bit for the audience?
Absolutely, great point, Jake. Yes, so the local nature recovery strategy is something that we are required to deliver. It's in the Environment Act. We happen to think it's quite a good idea, but it's something we are legally required to deliver. And the plan is that when they are created, because they will be delivered across the country, they'll be knitted together in a nature recovery network. So in order to make sure that all those puzzle pieces actually fit together, we need to be talking to our neighbours, i.e. Essex, Cambridge, Bedfordshire, London, and I'm missing one, making sure that we do work effectively cross-boundary. We share our working as we're going on. Bucks, thank you, Simon. And making sure that, where habitats do cross boundaries, which is basically everywhere, but especially those habitats like rivers, where there is really close connectivity between what happens in, say, Bucks and Beds and Hertfordshire, as those rivers flow down through the county. We share notes, we make sure we're following a similar methodology, and we try to knit together our suggestions for what work should take place. So an example of how we've done that actually is just actually loads of credit here to Bedfordshire. Bedfordshire carried out some really intensive mapping of their waterways to identify where blockages are on the river and where there is greatest opportunity for improvement. As part of that, because some of those rivers flow into Hertfordshire, they also mapped beyond their county boundary into Hertfordshire and shared that with us. So we've been able to use that and have quite a consistent approach to our waterways where they link up with beds. Happy to talk about that more if there's more specific questions about that as we go on. The last point on here, we'll talk a little bit more about timeline later, but publication is currently expected for late autumn. That is not the same for every county across England. We are all working to our own timescales for this. I mean, we're all working on it roughly now, but you will see that there are some LRSs that are already published, and there are some that are further behind than us. If you are interested in seeing a published one already, you can go and see the West of England Combined Authority. Worth mentioning, though, that although there are broad principles for how LRS is created, they are using slightly different methodologies across the country. So the West of England one may look quite different to actually what we finish up with. Next slide, please. Okay, so what will the LRS do and what won't it do, importantly? So a key feature of the LRS will be to identify where habitat creation and enhancement can take place. So there are plenty of sites with designations that are effectively protected for nature to more or less of a degree across the county. All of these will be mapped as part of the work on the LRS. However, the main focus of the LRS is not about what we do with these sites that already have protection and in most cases management plans. It's about what we can do outside of these sites. So where we can create new habitat where it doesn't yet exist, or where there's habitat that's it has potential to be great, but nothing much is happening with it at the moment because it's in a poor state due to non-ideal management or a lack of funding or whatever. So the real focus of the LRS is about creating new habitats, creating better habitats, and joining up and making more resilient those existing habitats. It would enable a more joined up approach. So both literally and metaphorically, part of the idea of the LRS is to join up habitats to make them better connected, to allow wildlife to move through those wildlife corridors more easily. But it will also allow us as organizations, as individuals who are invested in nature recovery, to work better together to deliver half-decent nature recovery projects, basically. Currently, we don't have anything that's holistic in this way. If you want to deliver a nature recovery project, you will employ an ecologist and you probably have a piece of land in mind where you want to do that. You'll carry out the work you need to do, and then you deliver the project. What the LRS will allow us to do is set county-wide priorities and priority areas, so that if you're interested in a nature recovery project, if you're interested in spending some money on a nature recovery project, your first port of call will be the LRS, and you can see where and what you should be doing in order to get the greatest bang for your buck in terms of benefits to nature. And that will allow us to really pool resources and efficiently deliver projects where we can have a real benefit for nature.
Yeah, just on that, Mark, we've had a question from Liz Greenwood. Thank you, Liz. Said, how can you deal with pollution and sewerage spillages? Obviously, pretty high on the news agenda, isn't it? In terms of river pollution and that kind of thing, especially with chalk streams and rivers in across Hertfordshire. Could you just touch upon that point briefly, just regarding pollution?
Yeah, very good question. So. Pollution affects rivers in lots of different ways. There's lots of different types of pollution. Some is out of scope for the LRS. So sewage that's spilled into rivers directly through water companies, for instance, is not something that's within the scope of the LRS. We can't do anything about that within the scope of this tool. That's not what this tool is about. It's about finding opportunities to improve habitats through direct work that can be done on those habitats. There's obviously work that can be done by the county council and partners involved in the nature recovery partnerships, such as the Environment Agency and Natural England, to tackle them, but they're dealt with through different tools. What the LRS can do with regard to pollution to rivers, one way in which rivers are polluted is runoff from agricultural fields. So that's pesticides or fertilizers or chemicals that are used on the land, which then flow off the land into river, and runoff from, say, roads, where again chemicals that are on the road when it's raining heavily wash off the road down an embankment and into a watercourse. Both of these can be tackled directly through the LRS because we can do something directly on the land, i.e. we can plant up habitat that stops the flow, redirects the flow, or absorbs some of the flow of chemicals so they don't end up in the river.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Mark. Just on agricultural question there. So Jill Goldsmith has come in to say, will it hold any weight in decisions around funding for farmers? I know you've got the bullet point there on hold weight in planning decisions, but just in terms of that access to grants, access to wider funding. Yeah.
Good question. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we cover this later, actually. So yeah, I'll get into it now. The main funding mechanism which the LRS will impact will be biodiversity net gain. So that will affect some farmers if they're looking to lease land to effectively be used for biodiversity enhancements by developers. I won't go into the ins and outs of biodiversity net gain, but effectively, if you haven't heard of it, a new piece of legislation that came in just about a year ago that means that developers now have to compensate for any habitat that they destroy through development and add a bit more on top. That's the actual net gain. So if you are a landowner and you've got some available land that you're not using for agriculture, for instance, you may be interested in signing a contract with a developer for them to be able to use your land for the next 30 years to create a habitat. The LRS will be really important in identifying where the greatest opportunities are for the delivery of this biodiversity net gain. So there will be some areas of strategic significance, they're called. If you deliver biodiversity net gain in those areas, effectively, it will cost you a little bit less than it would otherwise. You get an artificial uplift of your biodiversity score when you're delivering biodiversity net gain. With regard to other funding mechanisms, this will be really important to evidencing that what you're doing on your land is sort of identified as very good for nature. And there are measures that we've identified in this. I'll talk more about what measures are later, but without going into too much now, effectively actions that you could deliver that are tied into certain funding schemes. So there's stuff that we're recommending it should be done where there's funding already available for it. But if we're looking at what the LRS won't do, the LRS won't force land managers or landowners to take any specific action. So if you're a farmer that's interested in doing stuff for nature and the LRS basically doesn't identify your field or fields as somewhere where something could be done, it's not going to inhibit you from getting any funding. You can absolutely go ahead and do what you were going to do anyway. And if you are in an area, again, go ahead and do it. All it's going to do basically is, add further weight to your case that you're doing something good for nature. Sorry, a bit of a long answer there, but that is fairly complicated. Anything else, Jake?
All good on that one. Thank you, Mark.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think actually there's one other question that I can see as well. One from Alison, which I think we're going to come on to at some point, quite soon actually. Are you prioritising particular species? Different species can have conflicting requirements. I mean, I suppose, Mark, you could answer that now, but I think we are going to talk about that in a bit, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yes, I'll come on to that. So I'll leave that one for now because we've got some slides on that.
Sounds good. All
right. To finish off what the LRS will do, it will hold weight in planning decisions. So this is a really key point for this strategy, which, although, as I said, we have biodiversity strategies before, this is the first time we have written into planning legislation that a nature strategy really needs to be taken note of. So the LRS will be a material consideration in planning decisions, and it's something that local planning authorities will have to have regard to. So it's something that your district and borough council will have to think about when they are plan making and decision taking with regards to planning.
Yeah, just
It's
on
going to
that,
be
Mark.
really important.
Yeah, just on that, we've had a question from Sharina. Sorry, Sharina, thanks for your patience on this one. She said, given the impending changes to the planning system and the Chancellor's rather dismissive comments around bats in HS2, how much weight will it actually hold?
Okay, hopefully I've answered that with that last comment there. That's written into legislation that it is a material consideration for planning decisions and something that local planning authorities will have to have regard to. We just recently got some guidance published about it, so you can go and read that if that's your bag. But we will need still a little bit more to understand the nitty-gritty of it, and it's going to take a little while for local planning authorities to properly unpick how we're actually going to use that day to day, I think. Okay, so what the LRS won't be able to do, already covered one of these. Actually, I already covered the first two, I think. So yeah, as I said, it won't prevent nature conservation work in any areas that aren't identified as a priority. So if you want to do a project and it doesn't show up in the LRS as something that we've deemed as strategically significant, doesn't matter, go ahead and do it. And we're completely on board with that. There are suggestions in the LRS for quite big picture stuff that you can get involved with, or recommendations for how you can help nature recovery, which are not linked to specific areas as well. So this isn't just about a few key sites across the county. This is about holistic nature recovery. It won't force landowners and land managers to take specific actions. So even those areas that we have identified, if you do own a field there and it's your view that you want to keep using it in the same way you've been using it for X number of years, again, absolutely fine. This process does not designate any sites or restrict them for a particular land use. It makes recommendations for how and where we can help nature recovery. We can help nature recover the best. It doesn't create legal protections. Yeah, covered that already. And doesn't replace the need for ecological services. Really important. We will, through the LRS, give some quite broad brush suggestions for nature recovery, some more specific, but even on the more specific ones where we can say, create this type of woodland in this area, that doesn't undercut the need to consult a qualified ecologist, carry out a search with the Ecological Record Centre. All of that due diligence still needs to be done. Most of the data that we've got in here is the best data we have, but it's not perfect. It hasn't been ground truth that we haven't had an ecologist go out and survey the whole county in order to get this picture. So that work still needs to be done before commencing any actual nature recovery work. Next slide, please, Alex. Okay, so what's gone into this? Quite a lot, actually. As I said, we've got that top-down and bottom-up approach to make sure we try and cover all the bases. So we've had existing strategy plans go in here, like green infrastructure plans and biodiversity action plans, sustainability targets and plans for all of the local councils. We've had central government plans and targets go in, the State of Nature report from the Wildlife Trust, which is probably the most up-to-date account of the current state of nature within the county. We've had the local expertise of county recorders, in some cases, individuals who have expertise over a very specific species or species group that have really helped us with some of the finer detail on this. And then we've had contributions in terms of sites and areas from a wide variety of different individuals that have been involved at various stages of the engagement. So if you came to any of our engagement sessions last year, we were advertising the opportunity to put forward sites which you thought were of value or should be considered. And that's something that's gone into the mix as well as development allocations. So where local planning authorities have identified as the key areas for development. So there's a lot in the pot. Next slide, please, Alex. And all of this together gives us our LNRS. So specifically, it's cashed out in three main parts. We have a strategy area description. This is what you might be used to or expecting in terms of a strategy. So it gives a description of the county's wildlife and nature in a broad sense, the opportunities, the pressures, some of the history, some patterns, and also sets the broader strategic vision for the county. We then have the detailed sections on species, priorities, and measures. So this covers effectively what we want to get out of it and how we're going to do it, and some of the key species that we have identified as a most need of protection through the LNRS. And then the maps, which are, I think, the thing that really makes this more than a strategy and more like a toolkit. As you'll see later, these are online interactive maps that basically locate all of this relevant strategic information to specific areas and make it much more user-friendly. So all of this will be freely available once published, and hopefully intuitive and easy to use. We are reliant on your feedback to make sure that we do that. And there will also be a hard copy available. So we're required to do this for accessibility reasons. The main focus will be the online tool. And I would recommend, if you can use that, then you do, which is why we do really want to make sure it works for everybody. It's not just that specialists are using the online tool and everybody else reverts to the hard copy. The hard copy will be there, but it just won't have the interactivity and the usability of the online tool because of the interactive map function. But lastly, it will be free for all to use. So really central to this is that it's not something that's behind a paywall. It's free information that's out there so that anybody can get involved in. You don't have to be a specialist. You can be someone who just thinks, one day a month, I'd like to get involved in something to do with nature in my local community to do some good and be outside. That's absolutely fine. You can use it for that purpose. And if we've done our job well, you shouldn't have any problem doing that. Next slide, please, Alex.
Sorry, Mark, just on that, Malcolm's just asked, when will the LNRS be available as a draft for comment?
I will cover the timeline a bit later. We've got a slide on that, so yeah. I will save that for then. Okay, so our progress. So we have been carrying out engagement exercises with residents with the help of Alex and Jake, environmental experts and county recorders. So there are our species and habitat specialists, really. The Hertfordshire and Middlesex Wildlife Trust have been a key partner in linking up with those individuals and carrying out engagement and other work with them. We've worked with landowners and land managers. So Gascoigne Estates have been a key link in facilitating a lot of that as well. And the local district and borough councils as well have been a key partner. We're involved in both on the planning side and on the more nature sustainability side as well. We've got officers and councillors that are fed into this, and at a town and parish council level, that's also true as well. We've had councillors at that level feeding in, who've been very engaged. So since last summer, when we were asking people to put sites forward, we had over 300 unique sites submitted. So we have well over 300, but there were quite a few duplicates in there. Panthanger Park was a very popular suggestion. I think we had 27 different suggestions for Panthanger Park, for instance. So once we took out the duplicates, we had over 300 unique sites that are all being considered as potential areas of strategic significance. We are still working through that. The ambition was to have that done by now, but we had so many more submitted than we expected. And it turns out mapping nature is more difficult than you might think. So we are still trying to work through that to make sure we really give them time and properly consider each one. We had 243 responses to the survey. So that was through in-person engagement events we did that were in person and online through our online engagement events as well as some people that filled it out through the webpage. And we had nearly 4,000 visits to our webpage, which that might not sound like a lot. It's no Facebook, obviously, but considering that is a webpage that just updates on the progress of this strategy, I think that really shows the public interest in the local nature recovery strategy and why it's so important that we do a good job of this. Clearly, people want this, or at least interested to see what it can do. So I really want to make sure that we get this right first time. We have taken all that information and we have drafted out an initial draft of our priorities and measures. We have immediately started on refining them for a second draft. So, I'm saying we've got a draft here. The question was asked about when we can view this. Although they are in draft, they're not at a state where we feel we can share them more broadly at the moment. We want to refine them a little bit more before we put them out and ask to comment on them, so that we can correct the issues that we see there, and we're really putting out what we think is the best we can do. We have been working on which species to include. We started with an initial list of 1,751 species for consideration, which took quite some work to whittle down to the 54 that we now have. We have key and bespoke species. I'll explain what the difference is between them in a second. And we also have a first draft of mapping. So again, not a draft that we are happy to share yet. We still want to tweak it. I will show you a sample of it today that we are happy to share, but there's ongoing work on the mapping before we are sharing all of that for consultation. Next slide, please, Alex. So we have an initial draft, we have all the pieces to the puzzle, and now the work is to improve all of them as much as we can before we put it out to consultation and give you the chance to get into the nuts and bolts of it. So we'll be further examining community submitted sites, as I mentioned. We have had a look at these, but we really want to go through them and like I say, give them proper consideration. We need to identify broader focus areas for nature recovery. So with our initial mapping, we covered effectively too much of the county. What we really need to do is make sure that we have really the best of the best opportunities identified in this map. Because if we have too many opportunities in it, we haven't really identified any opportunities. There's no prioritization. So our very first iteration gave us a rough idea of where we should be looking, and we're effectively trying to focus in now on specific areas that really offer the best opportunities.
Yeah,
And
I think
of course-
that aligns with
go on, John.
a couple of questions there from Malcolm and Sharina just regarding the kind of call for sites. So Malcolm says, we haven't been asked for any sites yet, so may well be key sites not on your list. And then Sharina's asked, can we add sites to the list if someone identifies one? I think that's the fine balance, isn't it? Kind of getting the correct number of sites where you can kind of make that difference. Is that right, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a open call for sites last summer, I want to say, and then I think we opened it very briefly as well in the autumn. We are now getting close to the point where we can't accept more, but we still can at the moment. So if you have sites that you want to put forward, drop us an email. We'll share the email at the end of this session, and we'll see if we can include them and consider them. I saw a question came up about, can you confirm which sites have been included at the moment? No, we can't, because everything's still being considered. It's not a case of we've chosen 150 and now we're going to whittle them down. It's the case of we're looking at everything, we're narrowing down the area, we're still considering everything again, sort of as a second run. So it won't be until public consultation that you'll see which sites have firmly been included and which haven't.
That's great. I think that answers Sharina's second question there, which was, do you have specific criteria for sites? And Malcolm's second question, just saying, could you publish the list of sites you already have?
Yeah. Okay. Right. I think that's just for this slide, Alex, actually. Okay. Yeah. So that's my quite long preamble, to be fair. Let's have a look at some of the detail of the LRS. Thank you. So, firstly, the habitat groups. So in order to work on setting targets and setting actions, we had to categorize the different habitats that we have in Hertfordshire into a concise number of sets, basically. So there are various different ways that you can classify habitats. There's different habitat classification systems out there. To try and make it a bit simpler, we have classified habitats into 10 different groups. And then we've put these under 5 broader headings as well. So we've got woodland habitats, grassland and heath habitats. We've got wet habitats, farmland and urban. Some of these have habitats under them. So woodland, we've got 2 different types of habitat groups under there. Grassland and heath, we've got 3. For the wet habitats, we've also got 3. And then farmland and urban are self-contained. There's no further habitats under them. They might seem a bit odd for inclusion. We thought it was really important, though, to mark these out for a few different reasons, actually. So farmland, really important, partly because there's a lot of it in Hertfordshire, but it like urban, doesn't contain one habitat type. It's not a habitat in the same way that chalk grassland is, for instance. It's a land use that contains various different habitat types of the list there. But what farmland offers is some unique opportunities because of the land use type. And we wanted to make sure that there was stuff on there that really focused on that farmland. So as a farmer, you can look at this and see what is applicable to you. So there will be some opportunities that cover grassland in the farmland habitat, some that cover woodland, some that cover rivers and wetland stuff as well. The same is true for urban. It's a land use type which has lots of different habitats in it. Similarly, we wanted to include this though because, again, there's a lot of urban areas across the county, and we don't want nature to be seen as something that's sort of out there beyond the built environment, that's sort of out of touch. The point of the LRS is not just to improve large tracts of land, but also to integrate nature better within our urban areas, and delivering those nature-based solutions, so greening our urban areas so that it improves life for residents directly, as well as improves the environment. Urban opportunities also are those that basically anybody can get involved with. So some of the woodland and grassland ones, you might not be able to do that much unless you own a fairly sizable bit of land. Some of the opportunities we've got in there for urban really work at a personal level, so they're things everybody can get involved with. We'll have a look at them in a bit more detail in a moment. Worth saying, though, that for each of these habitat types, we have habitat vision. So that states really what we're trying to do in a big picture for that habitat type. We then have priorities, which are effectively the targets for what we're looking to achieve, and then the measures, which are the actions which we are suggesting take place in order to deliver these targets. So we are going to look at urban as a case study, and I'm going to take you through the vision, the species related to it, the priorities and measures, and then the mapping for that type as well. Next slide, please, Alex.
Just on that before you do move on, Alex, sorry guys. Quite a question from John. He said urban presumably could be important as links between sites may be necessary across urban areas. Thank you for that, John. Don't know if you want to touch upon that briefly, Mark.
Yes, absolutely. That's correct. And I think I'm going to talk about that a little bit more when we go into the measures, so I won't say anything more on that now.
No, that's great. I think we also had a question yesterday just regarding hedgerows as a really important kind of element of biodiversity. I haven't had any questions tonight on that, but is that something you could touch upon and how they integrate into these different habitat groups?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Jake. So as I said, different LRSs are being done differently. If you go view one of the ones that's published or one of the ones that's out for consultation elsewhere in the country, you might see hedgerows come up as a separate habitat type or as part of one of these habitat types. They are not name checked on this list. We haven't forgot about them, don't worry. It's because effectively we couldn't decide on one habitat where they fit, and we think they're best included in the majority of these habitats actually. So there are priorities and measures related to hedgerows in urban, in farmland, there's some in grassland and heath. I think there's probably some in woodland as well. They are treated more as a feature of some of these habitats rather than as a habitat in their own right. But very important, and yeah, definitely worth mentioning. Thanks, Jake. Okay, yeah, so we are going to look at the urban habitat specifically so that we can focus in on both the structure of the LRS, how this works, and some of the detail of the specifics, hopefully without overwhelming you with the hundreds of priorities and measures we have included in the in-progress draft. Next slide, please, Alex. So first of all, species. There are species allocated to each of those 10 habitat types. So we have key species and bespoke species. The way that I like to think about the difference between these is that key species effectively are those which we can use a field of dreams recovery approach. So we build the habitat and they will come. That's a bit simplistic, but overall, that is how we help these species recover. We build some habitat that they need and thrive in. We build more of it, we improve what's there, and those species will recover. Bespoke species are a little bit different. The recovery approach that we have to use for these is more like hospital treatment. So effectively, they are like a patient that comes into hospital and they need a specialist to come and effectively diagnose a recovery plan for them and say, well, you need this, you need this, you need this, and this. They need a lot of extra help effectively. So some examples. These are actually all of the key species that we have identified for urban. So slowworms, particularly in allotments, for instance, hedgehogs, waxcaps. There's some graveyards and crematoriums across the county that are really great habitat for waxcaps, and some that could be if management was modified as well. And lichen, not a species in its own right, a species group, but there's so many good ones. It's hard to choose. So habitats for them include cemeteries and graveyards as well, which typically fall in urban areas. And then examples of our bespoke species, swifts, of which you'll find quite a few in Hertford and Ware, but a species that require some pretty bespoke and tailored actions in order to support their nature recovery. So not just swift bricks, but also relevant habitats that they can use to feed on nearby to them. Next slide, please, Alex. So moving on from species to our habitat vision. So the next few slides do have a fair bit of content on. I'm not going to read all the content, and there may not be enough time for you to read through all the content, but as I said, I've put it on here so that when we provide you with the PowerPoint, there's more for you to read through. So I'll just talk around it a little bit. But this is our vision for urban. There is one for every habitat type. You might think it's a bit fluffy, but hopefully it provides you with a big picture view of what we're trying to do through these priorities and measures that we are setting out. So really, we're trying to make more space for nature in our cities, towns, and villages. So urban does cover even sort of rural villages. Effectively, it's any built-up area, and integrating nature into the fabric of our building and public spaces. So as I said, it's not just about nature being out there, it's about bringing it right in to our built environment and better integration.
Bringing that nature into the built environment. There's a question here from Sharina. She said, what about more pervasive issues which impact on all species, such as light pollution? She asks how the LNRS might be managing that.
Okay, so actually, if we move on to the next slide, I think that will help address that question specifically. So we don't have light pollution on this slide, but light pollution is one of the measures that we have identified for urban. So you will see here, the structure we have is the priority. So this priority focuses broadly on better connectivity of habitats within urban areas. Light pollution isn't specifically on this priority, but what I'm saying is we have a broad priority like that, and then a host of measures underneath which will help deliver that. Most of these are not species focused. The bespoke species do have their own set of measures, but the key species, some of them are name checked where there's a relevant measure, some of them not so much, because effectively through delivering that wider suite of habitat measures, it will benefit them. So you can see here we've got points about creating more hedgerows and using them to better connect up habitats. It doesn't mention any specific species there, but it will help some of the species that we've identified, as well as plenty of others that we haven't. So tackling something like light pollution is something that we think is important and have in there for the same reasons.
Simon's just said, you must come and talk to the BACS group about waxcap recovery. Not familiar with BACS. Have you come across that group before, Mark?
I don't know what the acronym stands for, but I'm pretty sure that Simon's talking about the cemeteries and crematoriums group.
Yes, and I do recall they have been engaged with previously.
Which I do need to do, and I think I already promised to do. I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, he said cemetery. He's agreed. Yeah, it's the same group. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for a reminder, Simon. I will make sure I do. Any other questions for now, Jake?
There's a few that I think will be addressed a little bit later on, so I'd suggest we continue. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So this priority focuses on connectivity. So it is quite, a big picture idea. This is a sample of the measures that are underneath this priority. In the actual strategy, we will have several more than this. So a lot of the priorities have 5, 6 or more measures underneath them. I've put a sample on here. I've tried to pick a variety of different approaches, so you can see what's been the sort of thing that's been included, as well as some of the specifics. If you take us to the next slide, Alex. Our second urban priority focuses on creating more habitat and enhancing the habitat that already exists. So, as I said, urban is really a land use that has lots of different habitats in there. So this is not just about creating, it's not about creating more urban habitat. It's about creating more grassland, more woodland, and more wet habitats as well, so blue spaces within urban areas. So this is a really good example of a priority that has a measure that is deliverable by basically anybody within the county, or at least anybody with a garden. Not everybody has access to a garden. So we've got the final measure on the slide there, enhancing private gardens, and then there's a list of activities that you can do within your own private space that will help nature recover. Now, obviously, one person doing this in the county isn't really going to help very much, but if we have a lot of people interested in doing this, especially within close proximity, this can really help provide stepping stones for species that move through the urban landscape and provide sort of refuges, which is really important. Also, two of the species groups mentioned there, mosses and lichens, commonly vilified in the garden scene. So any work that can be done to help them is really great, and gardens provide a great opportunity for them.
Yeah, hopefully Simon had an earlier question as well, just surrounding private gardens and spaces for nature recovery. He mentions golf courses as well, land owned by Big Pharma, and a couple of other examples. I think just taking that in turn, private gardens are captured under the LNRS priorities and measures, I understand, Mark, but not necessarily in the mapping. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, absolutely right, Jake. So not everything that is a priority and measure is mapped. Some of them it doesn't really make sense to map. Private gardens are one of them. We could map
hundreds of thousands of them across the county. Yeah.
I mean, if you've got a private garden, and if you do, then it applies to you. So you don't need to look at a map to know it.
I think it was interesting, wasn't it, in our engagement events, talking to allotment associations. I think that's probably a good example there, aligned to Simon's question around those kind of smaller areas. An allotment in and of itself probably isn't going to make too much difference, but actually all of the allotments across Hertfordshire could have a really significant impact. And it's something that, I think it's the JAMS group that we're engaged with previously, and as part of that mapping exercise. Yeah.
Yes, and as part of that, we have included a measure for allotments as well. So slowworms were a species that were identified as specifically sort of representing that allotment subhabitat. Again, I don't think I've got that one on here, but that is another example of something that you as an individual can do if you're lucky enough to have an allotment without wider organizational involvement or lots of funding. Okay, if you could take us to the next slide, please, Alex. Thank you. So this is our third and final priority for urban. So we only have 3 for urban. Different habitats have a different amount, but we stuck to quite a strict structure for urban. So we wanted 1 on connectivity, 1 on creating and enhancing habitat, and this final one on wider environmental benefits or nature-based solutions. So that's what benefits can we deliver for the wider environment and for residents directly through also creating nature and creating habitat. So this really shows the sort of the broad focus of the LNRS, and the final measure we've got there for this priority is creating more green space or making more green space accessible so that we improve access to green space across the county. This is something that's a national priority, so it's something we wanted to replicate at the county level as well. Compared to the national average, which I can't recall off the top of my head, We have very good access to green space within Hertfordshire. We're very lucky in that regard. So we're currently at 95.8%. Sorry, that's 95.8% of households have accessible green space within, I believe it's a 10-minute walk. So that's roughly about a kilometre away from their house. But we are looking to improve that to 98% through the LRS process. Okay.
Just had a question. Yeah, just had a question from Alison there saying, how do you propose to actually enact the measures relating to private gardens? Thank you, Alison.
Sorry, say that again, Jake.
How do you propose to enact the measures relating to private gardens? How can you encourage members of the public to take part and put these measures in place?
Yeah, okay. So in terms of enacting, we can't enact those measures. They are in private gardens, so it's completely up to private individuals to take it upon themselves to do that. They are included because we wanted to make sure that there was something, as I said, at every level. So we didn't want this to be something that only large organisations with substantial amounts of funding available to them could be involved in. We wanted something that everybody could do something. However, there will be work to obviously encourage and build support for the LRS to make people aware of what we're suggesting and provide online resources to basically understand nature recovery and make it a bit easier to be involved with it.
Yeah, I think it's an education piece, absolutely. And this kind of relates to Alison's earlier question. Does this extend to mandating hedges, for example, on new developments? I don't think the LNRS would mandate requiring hedges instead of fences on new development. I guess it would be the same answer there. Is that right, Mark?
It would. There's more we could do in that case, but it definitely doesn't mandate. So the LNRS identifies priorities, but in terms of new developments, local planning authorities will have to have regard for the LNRS, and it will be a material consideration. So effectively, if a planning application comes across the desk of a local planning authority once this is published, and we have a measure in here that suggests hedges should be, a certain percentage of hedges, let's say, should be suggested for new developments, the local planning authority will have to consider that and weigh that up when considering whether they allow the application or whether they go back with any comments. So there's more opportunity to push for that kind of action. Anything else on there?
Not directly relating to this slide, so I think we can continue for now. That's right. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Right, yeah, so if we move on to the mapping now. So I'm going to show you basically live in our web viewer the draft mapping we have. As I've said several times, but I can never say it enough, this is still in progress. That being said, we are really keen to get your feedback on what it looks like, the usability of it, whether you think this will be useful to you and how you use it. And we have the web form to capture all of that feedback, which we will share the link for towards the end of this. But we are going to now look at some of the mapping for the urban habitat, and you can see how what I've just talked you through is actually represented in a geographical format. So I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so we're here looking at an area of Hemel Hempstead, and you can see there are a few different colours on here. So we are only looking at the urban measures. In the final, or in the consultation draft that you'll be able to see in the summer, you will be able to see all of the urban and all the other habitat measures and overlay them and turn them off and play around with them. So all the functionality I show you now, you'll be able to do with a wider set of data. But effectively, what we have here are the priorities I've just gone through and some of the measures represented geographically in the areas where they can be delivered. So, for example, 2.1 is this blue hatching, which I can see actually is not in this area. So I picked a bad example here. Let's see if there's more over here. I think that's being overlaid. Hang on. Right, let me turn some of these off. So if you go into here, you can see the different urban measures. They're each given a code. This is so that you can easily correspond each measure to the specific map layers that you see on the map. In the final version, we want to make this a little bit better than it is now, so that you'll either see the name of the measure, or you'll get a link through to basically the document that has the measure written out. I'm cross-referencing codes, which makes it a little bit more difficult for me now, but yeah, that is one of the features of it being in progress.
Yeah, Simon's just asked there, are those codes standardized across the UK, Mark?
Absolutely not. So this is just something we've done. It's effectively internal, really, so we can keep track while we're developing this. Yeah, okay, that's what was happening, right? I thought that might be the case. So if I turn them all off except urban measures 2.1 and 2.5, they actually share a mapping layer because they are identified in exactly the same areas, but we're going to ignore that for a moment. Urban 2.1 is enhancing parkland by leaving 12% of the areas unmown. So you can see here that wide swathes of grassland have been identified for this opportunity. And you can turn on some other ones. So there were some overlaid ones there, which made it a bit more confusing. Urban 3.3 is to create more grassland or make accessible existing grassland to improve access to green space. So some of these areas have been identified as available for both of those measures. So that's as expected, that there will be some overlap. You'll see that with the measures that a particular site might be identified for one or more particular measures. In some cases, that's because they're complementary. So we've got a few different measures in there that would all be contributing to deliver a better grassland habitat, for instance. There are some sites that you may have conflicting measures on as well, because there's really a choice for the landowner about whether they want to deliver grassland or woodland there, if they want to do anything at all. But as I say, you will be able to look through, you will be able to pick a plot of land and see what can be done. So there's sort of two ways you can approach this. You could read the strategic document. As you know, I've shown you some of it already. You could see, oh, I want to know where the parks are, where I could leave 12% unmown. You know that's urban measure 2.1. You can turn them all off as I did, and then you can scroll around the county and see where the particular areas where this measure applies. Similarly, you may have a plot of land that you own or you're interested in, but you want to do something for nature recovery, but you don't know what you want to do there. So if I just turn these back on for a moment. So you could directly come into the map without looking at the strategy document. Let's say you're over somewhere over here. It's being a little bit slow.
Just whilst you're doing that, Mark, Heidi's just said, would hope that the final tool shows the description of the code when you click on it, so it's easier to view. I think that's absolutely, yeah, very fair. I think that's what, yeah, the kind of input we'd like to see on that survey in the link, which we'll share at the end. Have you got any comments on that one, just as you're doing that, Mark?
I would say absolutely. That is the plan. So we don't want to release it where you have to look at the code here and then go and check a separate document. The idea is that these would seamlessly link together. So you can see actually on here, we're partially through improving this. We've got a code here. You actually get some of the content pop up in the left-hand pane here. So halt and reverse the fragmentation of habitat in the built environment, blah, 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 blah. Some of the content's in there. It will be a short description, but you will be able to click on this code and it will take you through to the relevant page in the strategic document that gives you all the detail for that. Sorry, this is being a little bit slow. This is because we're having our back end updating this evening, which is poor timing, but not something I can control, unfortunately. So it is being a bit slow to pop in. What I wanted to show you was if you had an area that you're interested in, but you didn't know what you wanted to do on it, you can click on it. And hopefully it's not too slow doing this. You'll get a pop-up, and that will tell you all the relevant measures that apply to this site. So in fact, this has just got these two. In some cases where you get more overlaid data, you'll be able to scroll through all the available measures. And in the final version, or the consultation version, you'll be able to click the links to go through to the strategic document and read all about what work could be done there. As I said before, that isn't all the information you need to be able to then go out and start creating new habitat there. The LRS just sort of points you in the right direction and suggests priorities. You will need to go and consult an ecologist if you're engaging in quite substantial habitat creation, and carry out a record search and some other due diligence to make sure that's appropriate action.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. We've just got a question from Jill, and then I think the same question from Sharina. Thanks both. Just regarding the shaded areas. Are the shaded bits the areas that you've mapped? Now, they are under that current view, is my understanding, but you don't have everything selected there. So there are other areas within the map that you haven't selected as part of that view. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. So we are looking at just urban measures here. The others are not complete yet. So I can't share them with you, but what you will have is, sorry, let me open that up again. In the consultation version, you will be able to click through and click on or off all of the measures for the LRS. So you'll be able to overlay grassland opportunities, woodland opportunities, and urban, and then you can go into them and click on the specific measures. So yes, the hatched bits are the only bits mapped, but there is a lot more mapped than I'm showing here. It's quite overwhelming if you have everything on at once. You wouldn't want to look at it in any case, but it is also lagging a lot, as I said, due to the update. So it's not actually showing everything it's supposed to be at the moment, unfortunately.
Just in beta mode for purposes of this demonstration. Jill's just said, but these are just opportunity sites. Is that right?
Just opportunities, yeah. So opportunities in several different ways, though. So there could be existing habitat there that is fairly decent, but it could be really good. So there's an enhancement opportunity. It could be that there's sort of nothing there in terms of ecology. So it's, let's say for the sake of argument, an agricultural field. It's just been ploughed, and it could be a woodland, or it could be effectively an area like I can't say for sure, but could be there's something valuable here that's been cut out effectively, and so by delivering habitat creation around this, we're sort of buffering an existing site that's of high value habitat, or connecting sites of existing habitat. For instance, there's two white blobs there.
Brilliant, thanks, Mark. I'd saved a couple of questions that Simon had asked us in the Q&A section for this mapping demonstration. The first question he had was just regarding historic parks and gardens. He said, I understand DEFRA has not supported the use of HP&G as a layer in the mapping. I think Norfolk and Suffolk may as part of their LNRS. I'm not familiar with that. He said, however, be safeguarding them by removing the measures within HP&G that might compromise their value. How is Herts safeguarding historic parks and gardens? Are they mapped within this? I think is the question there, Mark.
So they aren't all mapped, or at least no, I shouldn't say that. I don't know if they're all mapped, but we do have some data held on historic parks and gardens, and that has been used to identify potential measures. So I don't know if they have all had measures identified on them or not. That's something I wouldn't be able to confirm, but they are in the mix. I'm not sure where that data set originates, if that's a local data set we've used because of the issues with the national data set. Luckily, I hadn't haven't had to delve directly into the data sets myself.
Okay, thank you. Simon also says DEFRA has a number of targets for protected landscapes. Will the Chilterns boundary be identified as a layer within the mapping or be superimposed on the base map so that people can make choices about, for example, where to pursue tree planting?
Okay, interesting question. So no, that won't feature in the LRS map. We've had quite prescriptive guidance on what we can and can't include in this. So I haven't mentioned this, but you will see at the top of the screen there on the left-hand side in the blue bar, areas of particular importance for biodiversity. Those are all the sites in the county that have some kind of designation. So nature reserves, local and national type, local wildlife sites, special areas of protection. All of those sites we have to map and have to include. Those are not sites, for the most part, that we have identified as opportunities because their sites are already being managed for nature. So the NRS doesn't really interfere with them. For the most part, it's about opportunities outside of them. But we have to include them. That's a requirement of the NRS. We should also include measures. That's the main focus of the NRS. We're not really supposed to include anything else. So the boundary for the Chilterns doesn't count as an area for particular importance biodiversity. There is a specific list of sites that need to be included in that, and we're not allowed to miss any off or add any to it. Some measures will be applicable to that area, but you won't be able to see within the LRS viewer whether something is in or outside of that boundary, I'm afraid. You have to refer to another map to get that information.
Brilliant, thank you. Sorry, Simon's just come back there again. HPG needs a twin approach, identifying things to do that relate to HPG habitats and measures that could compromise the value of historic parks and gardens that could be avoided, e.g. tree planting to safeguard water courses that would obstruct capability brown views, apparently. Yeah.
Noted. I'm conscious of time, Jake, so I'm going to move back to the presentation. If that's all right. So I know we've just got a couple of slides to cover just before people might be dropping off. So the last key point before we start providing you with just the finer details that you would need to provide feedback and what to do next is a quick overview of the timeline. So what's going to happen next? So we're in February there, we're running this session, it's noted on there. This week, we're also running some sessions with environmental stakeholders through the Wildlife Trust. They're leading on that. And we've got some sessions with land managers as well. Similar to this, asking for some usability feedback and looking at that mapping and telling us what they think. We are going to take the feedback from all of those sessions, including this one, and spend March frantically working on delivering our final draft ready for consultation. So we need to get that ready for the end of the month, at the end of next month, so that that can then be shared with district and borough councils, as well as our neighbouring authorities, so the counties surrounding Hertfordshire, and they can effectively provide final comments before that goes out to public consultation, which is a process we're required to follow by DEFRA. So all being well, we will start public consultation in the summer. We're going to have 8 weeks of consultation. So there'll be plenty of time for you to properly get into this and have a deep dive on both the strategic content and the mapping work as well, and to see sort of the nice, the written part of the strategy as well, which provides a lot of context and scene setting and a full explanation of how the LRS will work. Then late summer, we will be reviewing all the feedback from consultation. So we'll close consultation. We will be acting on that feedback to create our final draft of the LRS, and then effectively go through that process again to provide the final draft to the district and borough councils and neighbouring authorities, with the view to publish in late autumn. So then the LRS will be live, and you will be able to have access to it from then on.
We had a question yesterday, Mark, just surrounding parish councils and town councils with that as well. Will they have an opportunity there as well?
Yeah, good point, Jake. So we are required by legislation to provide the draft to the district and boroughs and to the neighbouring authorities before public consultation, and then again before final publication. It's very important to get their view on it, but the most important comments from them, we're not expecting to come out of that process. That's a formal process that we need to go through. The district and boroughs and the neighbouring authorities have been involved in the production process, so they are well aware of the state of the LRS now. They've seen early drafts and we're working very closely with them on it. The same has happened with town and parish councils. So the Association of Town and Parish Councils are represented on our steering group. They are keenly involved in this, and we've run some engagement sessions as well with them. So they won't get that formal opportunity ahead of public consultation and publication to provide final comments. But by that stage, we would expect that they will have provided all the comments that they'd recently be interested in doing. They can, of course, provide comments through the public consultation, as anybody can as well.
Great, thank you. We did have a question from Heidi half an hour ago. Thanks for your patience, Heidi. I thought it'd be worth saving it for this section, just surrounding, she said, question for later perhaps, but how are you hoping to measure the improvements made? Will lessons from other LNRSs be learnt and included in Herts, and how often will the Herts LNRS be updated? So I guess what does that continued timeline look like after that late autumn piece there, Mark, and those kind of specific KPIs in kind of measuring success?
Sure. So some of this is set out by legislation, and some of it we need to work out for ourselves. So once the LNRS is published, it will need to remain out there in public without it being updated until central government say it's time to update. And that's so that it's basically synchronized across the country. We don't know when that will be. We've been told it will be between 3 and 10 years' time. In terms of monitoring, there is not guidance or legislation that specifies how that should be done. So that will be up to each county to determine the monitoring process for their own LRS. It's something that we're keenly aware of is really essential to get right. Due to the timeline we have to work to, though, it's not something that we've been able to give much time to at this point. If we didn't have a national timeline that we were working to, we'd spend longer basically working on this, and those measures which I showed you would be made a bit more smart. So we'd have very specific targets on there. We'd have details of how we were going to measure each measure, what success would look like, and sort of a unique progress tracker for each one. We don't have time to do that because we have to get this published this year. So we will set the priorities and measures as accurately as we can. And once we get to public consultation in the summer, we will turn our attention to thinking about the ongoing measurement of this. It's quite a long-term process, as I said, 3 to 10 years before it's updated. That doesn't mean we can wait 3 to 10 years before we start measuring things. We need to be on this, very early on, so that we're gathering data ready for that publication. But it's something we need to think carefully about and spend quite a bit of time making sure that we get right over the second half of this year, really.
Brilliant. I think Heidi's just come back on that. She said, thanks. It would be a shame for all this hard work to be wasted with the measurable outcome lost in obscurity. I think kind of aligns to Sharina's question, who is going to monitor that those improvements do happen? Yeah.
So, we have a partnership that's been established for delivery of this effectively. Today we had a meeting actually about what the future of the partnership looks like post publication, because currently that partnership exists solely to create and publish an LRS, and we'll be transitioning towards monitoring the LRS, ready for update, thinking about delivery, thinking about funding and tying that all up. So we are very much thinking about that now. And as I said, once we got to public consultation, that's going to free up a lot of time for us to be able to focus on that in more detail. And then probably not before publication, you won't see anything public about monitoring, but we will shortly after publication be starting to speak publicly about how we're going to monitor that and how we will share that monitoring with you as well.
Sounds great. I think in the shorter term, we've got a couple of questions from Liz and Malcolm. Liz said she's recommended a few sites in the chat there for inclusion. She said, should I send you an email about these sites? I think yes, absolutely. There'll be an email address at the end. Thank you, Liz. And then Malcolm, I think we might have met at a previous event. If it's Malcolm of the Hertfordshire and Middlesex Butterfly Conservation, you say we are one of the most active environmental groups in Herts. When will we be consulted? I understand we had met with you previously. If you are from that organisation, do let us know in the chat if you are. But again, yeah, if you could drop us an email, absolutely, we can take that offline.
Okay, shall we move on to the next slide? So next steps for both you and us. So seems a bit redundant now, but ask questions. We have plenty of questions. Really good to hear your questions, and the caliber of them shows how interested and engaged you are with this. So really good to see so many of you and hear the fine-grained questions you're asking this evening. But by all means, if you have further questions, do send us an email. The email's on there. View the recording of this as well. So we'll share the recording and we'll share the PowerPoint, so you can go back over and have a look at the detail of the priorities and measures. And you can rewatch recording of this to view the mapping again, and then provide us with your feedback. So we've got the details of that on the next slide. The next steps for us, we will be refining and improving this draft at pace, as I said. So we're looking to get something done for the end of next month, which then needs to go through the district and borough councils and our neighbouring authorities before public consultation can start on it. So very soon you'll be able to see the full LRS and contribute to that. And yeah, public consultation later this year, which we really look forward to getting wide scale feedback on this. But by all means, if you have comments now, we do really want to hear them. Don't keep quiet until public consultation if you have suggestions about anything we talked about tonight, and fill in that feedback form, because it is still in progress, and the earlier you contact us, as well, the easier it is for us to consider your feedback and what changes we can make. And there's some points there on how you can stay updated on the LRS as it progresses. So we have an update me, which effectively will provide you with a monthly update on what's happening. If you sign up to the Hertfordshire County Council Sustainability Update Me, that always includes a little bit on the LRS. So there's details of how you can do that on our webpage. If you don't want to sign up for updates because you've already got too many emails in your inbox, you can always just check our webpage. That is updated on at least a monthly basis. So there's always a little update on there to say what we've been doing this month, as well as other information about events like this, and a few other bits. Okay, next slide, please, Alex. So those are the details for the feedback form. You can find that on our webpage, or you can go to that link to get to it directly. So that's hertfordshire.gov.uk/LRS webinar feedback, or you can scan that code. If all of that fails, send us an email, and we'll try and find another way to get your input. If you have any input that isn't covered by the form, or you want to ask us any other questions, don't hesitate to drop us a line, and we'll be happy to chat to you and go through any of this or more. And just a reminder there that the feedback form is live until the 9th of March. So we do have to be strict with that, because we are working to quite a tight time scale. So please make sure if you do have feedback, you get it to us by that date, so that we can incorporate it into the next draft. Okay, thank you very much. I think that's all we've got in terms of presentation. If we've got any further questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you want to get off, we've come to time, so I won't be offended if you disappear. Because you've got a TV program.
We did have a statement from Heidi. She said, "Thanks all, Mark. You deserve a beer after all that talking. So well done."
Thank you very much. Please put that on your feedback form.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi. Just a couple of questions there. One from Anna. Are churchyard groups included on the map? Dorothy said, I share Anna's question as I monitor wildlife in 2 churchyards.
Yeah, great point. So yeah, we have a couple of specific measures actually on churchyards and crematoriums, informed by, as Simon mentioned, that group that I can't remember the acronym of, but I have spoke to a couple of members of that last year. They provide some key habitat for wax caps and mosses and lichens. So yes, we have some specific measures on there and they are mapped.
Brilliant. I think that's all of the questions for now, as far as I can see, unless there's any furthers that you've spotted there, Alex.
No, I think that covers everything. I think we really have covered everything there, Mark. That's some really, really good, really useful comments and questions coming through, and it seems to me, based on the feedback we're getting already, that everyone found that very useful. So I suppose while Mark has a lie down, just want to say thanks so much for everyone attending. As Mark pointed out, we will be sending an email to everyone who signed up for this webinar, an email which will have the presentation and also a link to the YouTube video, which will be of this webinar. So you'll be able to read through and watch again at your leisure. And that will also include all the links that you need for the email address and the feedback form as well. So yes, thanks very much, everyone, and have a lovely evening.
Yeah, thanks very much all.
Thank you.
Really good to hear from you.
Bye now.